As India accuses Pakistan of fueling ethnic tensions in the country over the last few weeks, we ask how much of these allegations are true and how will this affect the never-ending trouble between the two countries? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Rida Fakhri. India has accused Pakistan of fabricating threatening messages sent by mobile phones and over the internet that triggered panic among migrant workers in southern Indian cities, driving thousands of them to flee their homes. The messages threatened revenge attacks by Muslims against people from indigenous communities in the northeastern state of Assam. In July, violence in the state between the Bodo tribe and Muslim groups resulted in the deaths of at least 77 people and the displacement of around 400,000, most of whom are Muslims of Bangladeshi origin. Casey Kaufman explains.
A picture of desperation. Bangladeshi Muslims at a refugee camp in West Bengal. Far from home, driven out by the threat of ethnically motivated violence. But now the Indian government says there has been a deliberate campaign to stir up tensions. It says it has blocked several websites in Pakistan that show images apparently of people who had been killed in revenge attacks for the violence in Assam. But actually, they were doctored pictures of victims of natural disasters. Officials say inflammatory bulk text messages were also sent out, suggesting something similar was about to happen across other parts of India.
Some photographs were being circulated, which had photographs of people who had died in a cyclone. And they were being portrayed as people who have been killed in violence in Myanmar.
It's the fear of more violent scenes like these in Uttar Pradesh on Saturday that has forced the Indian authorities to act. They say they've arrested 4 men in Bangalore and seized computers and mobile phones, which have been used to send fake images from Assam. At the heart of the violence, there is a dispute between the mainly Hindu Bodo people and predominantly Muslim settlers of Bengali descent. The two groups have clashed sporadically since the 1990s. But with thousands of people fleeing violence and the threat of it elsewhere, a peaceful solution that's acceptable to all sides seems very distant. Casey Kaufman, Al Jazeera.
Now, ethnic tension in the Indian state of Assam isn't new. It actually goes back a long way. Since the late 1970s, there have been protests against illegal migration from Bangladesh. The All Assam Students' Union was one of the main groups campaigning against Bangladeshi immigrants. In 1983, over 2,000 Muslim men, women and children were killed in Nelly district. The Assam Accords in 1985 provided for sealing off the border and setting up a national citizens database using DNA testing to determine citizenship. And failure to implement provisions of the accord has been blamed for continued violence. In 1994, a relief camp for migrants was attacked in Barbetta district. 100 people were killed. Thousands more have since been made homeless. So how much of these latest allegations by India are actually true? Well, to answer this, we're joined by our three guests in New Delhi. C Singh, a former Indian diplomat in London; Subir Sinha, a senior lecturer in institutions and development at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies; and in Islamabad, Ahmed Quraishi, a Pakistan affairs analyst and columnist with News International. Let me begin with C Singh, if I can. Serious accusations directed by India against Pakistan once again. Why is India blaming Pakistan for fomenting the recent ethnic violence and tensions in Assam state?
I've not seen the report that the Home Secretary has apparently produced and sent to the government, but what is being picked up by the media may not be the full picture. What he's essentially saying is that the SMSs have been loaded from locations in Pakistan. Now, that may be different from saying that the Pakistan government or some agency under the control of the Pakistan government was responsible for that. That's entirely different leap.
But many people will not make the distinction. They will just read Pakistan into this and might suspect that the Pakistani government or maybe its intelligence services are behind it. The Pakistanis say this is highly irresponsible on the part of the Indian government. Should the Indian government have handled it differently? Perhaps shared the information first with Pakistan through diplomatic channels instead of letting out the information over overnight in the way it did?
Well, you must realize that Government of India, particularly the Home Ministry, has been under a lot of pressure because this began in Assam, then we had some rioting in Mumbai, and then it's led to an exodus from a southern city of Karnataka state. And therefore, they were under pressure to show that they were not at fault and they had not missed something, and this was emanating from elsewhere. So they found a link. Yes, you can make a case that this could have been handled differently. Probably the Foreign Ministry here would be making the same argument with the Home Ministry, but this is not for the first time. It happens quite often that you find the Home Ministry batting differently to the domestic audience, and the External Affairs Ministry then tries picking up the bits and handles it with Pakistan.
And of course, this has many people once again accusing the Indian government of trying to divert the attention away from what very well may be, some would say, the shortcomings of the Indian government in handling what should have been a local domestic issue.
It is a domestic issue, but at the same time, if indeed the social media sites have been used, this would be a first here. This happened in the Arab Spring in a number of Arab countries, and we've seen, and probably what they have missed is the multiplier effect because of this thing going, and particularly because some of the pictures are morphed and they are picked up from elsewhere and they're distributed, and that's what I think made the government angry. It's not that there is a factual reporting taking place here. These are pictures picked up from some other countries, Myanmar and so on and so forth, and then put on the site. And this is, therefore, they were taken aback on the way the social media sites suddenly started multiplying it.
Ahmed Quraishi, the Indian government's apparently angry. How angry will the Pakistani government be about these latest accusations?
Well, let's take the good side of the news first. At least the Indian government didn't accuse Pakistan of getting the mobile text messaging technology from China. I mean, so there's hope in that. But getting back to the point, I think this is Indian government really escaping forward. And this is clearly an issue of ethnic tensions inside India that Pakistan really has nothing to do. There is no case really of any Pakistani meddling in this matter. Geographically, this area where the problem exists is really very far away from Pakistan. There's no staging ground for Pakistan. I mean, I'm sure you know that Pakistan, for example, many people in Pakistan accuse India of having some role, a mischief against Pakistan in Afghanistan, which is an area contiguous to the Pakistani territory. But for Pakistan to meddle in this kind of a matter, an ethnic tension in the extreme eastern part of India would be impossible, nearly impossible. There is no staging ground for Pakistan physically to be involved. And of course, certainly the question of messages emanating from Pakistan, unless of course the Indian government and particularly the Interior Ministry comes up with some evidence, I think this is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, they say they do have evidence. The Indian Home Secretary C Singh says that India has evidence that these morphed images, he says, that spread panic among workers in southern Indian cities were identified and that the bulk of them were in fact uploaded in Pakistan.
I can't believe that the source of tension that would lead hundreds of thousands of Indian citizens to really flee cities would be simply messages from Pakistan. I mean, we're talking about here an issue intrinsic to India and ethnic tension. I mean, you're talking about the Eastern Corridor that is rife with strife and insurgencies and separatist movements. I mean, this is a place where early last year or the year before, an Indian nuclear scientist disappeared from one of the nuclear installations in that part of India and was found floating dead in a river near that nuclear installation. I mean, this is a region that is really full of trouble, full of problems. And this incident, the theory that Pakistani messages really resulted in hundreds of thousands of Indian citizens running away from cities, doesn't really make sense.
Subir Sinha, these accusations, counter-accusations, to what extent do they make sense? To what extent do they actually cloud the main issues here?
Oh, I think this is entirely to cloud up the main issue, and in response particularly to the colleague from Pakistan, I don't think this is a matter of either or really. I think it is quite likely, or in fact possible, and at this point it is really quite early to see what exactly the details of this are, but it has not been the first time, if this was to be the case, that Pakistan would have, or some elements within that would have seized upon this opportunity. But I want to agree with him that this is primarily a domestic Indian problem. The fact that these messages had the resonance that they did, basically stimulating tens of thousands of people to flee their livelihoods, to take trains back desperately to their places of origin, really points to the fact that there has been a rampant racism against people from the Northeast all across the country. Initially in Delhi, and now obviously because they've migrated in large numbers to many other parts of the country as well. For example, Bangalore, this has not happened only recently. A couple of months ago, you had students from the Northeast who had been subjected to all kinds of harassment in the southern city of Bangalore. So I think India, before it points its fingers to Pakistan, whether or not that is legitimate, needs to set its own house in order. There is rampant racism and absolute failure of the state to protect its citizens and provide them with security in other parts of the country, and in fact an extremely casual attitude with respect to the security of young people, especially women, but men and women who are migrants from the Northeast in our metropolitan centers. So there should be no attempt acceptable that takes the attention away from the incapacity of the Indian state as far as providing security to its citizens
but
is concerned.
Before we look though at the response of the Indian government and whether or not it has been adequate enough, what would you say is at the heart of this latest racial, tribal, religious tension in that Assam state? Some say it is the loss of land, livelihood, others pin it down to political power and competition for political power. I mean, how do you see it?
Well, actually all of the above. I mean, very famously there was a so-called Nelly massacre which had taken place more than 2.5 decades ago. There is an issue with respect to the fact that the borders, when they were constructed in 1947 in this part of the world, were basically designed very much in haste. There are communities that basically are straddling these national borders, and there is border infiltration as well. There are lots of people from Bangladesh who come to India, settle down, and perhaps are even seasonal migrants and so on. Personally, I do not have a problem with that. The report in Outlook magazine as of this morning has shown that the extent of illegal immigration into India from Bangladesh is massively exaggerated. Particularly our right-wing parties like the BJP and so on have repeatedly, and in fact its leader in parliament, Arun Jaitley, has come out and blamed illegal migrants for all of that has happened. But it seems to me that the anti-immigrant card, that is particularly a card that the BJP, the Indian Hindu Party, has played, is a highly irresponsible card to play at this point in time without even government reports and so on and so forth.
Casey Singh, then how do you react to these accusations that the Indian government has failed to put its house in order, that Indian authorities did not react quickly enough to come to the help of those who have been persecuted for quite a while now in Assam state?
Firstly, I'm not speaking on behalf of Government of India, so I'm speaking as an independent analyst. And in fact, I criticize the government in my presentation. Firstly, a friend in Pakistan is completely out of touch with the role that social media can play. He's completely ignoring what we've seen in the Arab world. The whole of Arab Spring, it started just killing one person in Tunisia, and then it multiplied. So there is a huge multiplier effect, which there may well be tensions which were in existence, but you can inflame it and you can set it on fire and create a much bigger explosion, because there's no reason why existing tension which may have been there latent and of a very small nature in Bangalore should have suddenly turned into something where people start leaving on the trains. In fact, the Home Minister of that state came to the station, gave them assurances. The Chief Minister went on the television and committed himself that no, we will take care of anyone if any step is taken. And secondly, there is a serious problem of migration. The Home Ministry has given an answer to a question in the Parliament just about last week, said that there are 80,000 Bangladeshis who have come on visas and not gone back to Bangladesh, and these are as yet people on visas. And there is then migration across the border, because the growth of the Muslim population in the sensitive areas along the Bangladesh border is much greater than the normal birth rate. So it doesn't require any great investigation to figure that out. That is much greater than even the birth rate amongst the Muslim population of India. So there is a problem there, but what we are discussing today is not whether India has that problem. A country India's size will have these problems, as indeed does Europe or any other country. What we are discussing today is, when there was a sensitive situation, did certain agencies in Pakistan inflame it or not? And what the Home Secretary is saying is we have definite electronic trail which goes all the way to Pakistan where the uploading was done. It's not a matter of dispute. You'll obviously present that. In today's world, you don't make these allegations without proof.
All right, Ahmed Quraishi, then if the Indian government does present the evidence, if there is that trail of evidence that suggests that these messages emanated from within Pakistan, what would the Pakistani government do? Will it cooperate? What will it do?
I'm just surprised at my guest, Mr. Singh from New Delhi, who's saying that Indian government has never made claims without any evidence. Just a couple of months back, the Indian government released a very high-level security alert about the entry of terrorists into the city of Mumbai who were planning some terrorist attacks. And they released 4 photographs, and it turned out the 4 photographs were sort of stolen from the identity cards of 4 Pakistani citizens who work as telecom salesmen in the city of Lahore who were interviewed on TV in Pakistan, and it was proven that the Indian government had it wrong. So they had no, and it was an embarrassment, of course, for India. Coming back to the social media thing, there is, unlike what both of my friends are claiming here, there is no previous evidence or history of a campaign originating from Pakistan on social media causing trouble inside India. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is a conspiracy theory. It has never happened before. And any suggestion that there is a probability or a possibility is ridiculous. And of course, we'll wait for the evidence, and I highly doubt this thing. But let me just give you one reason why this kind of a problem could happen, why so many people could really get out, and there could be an exodus from Indian cities. In Pune, which is a small city very close to Mumbai, Indian citizens who reside in that city came out and harassed some of these migrants from northeastern India, beat them up as a result of whatever is happening in northeastern India. So there is enough reason for the northeastern Indian immigrants to really escape and run away because they don't trust the level of tolerance in the Indian society. That's the only reason why you're seeing this mass exodus from major Indian cities of these poor northeastern migrants, and not any campaign or alleged campaign on social media emanating from Pakistan. I mean, why would Indian citizens really... Exactly. Why would Indian citizens really go and harass northeastern Indian migrants in Mumbai, in Pune, in Bangalore? They beat them up on the streets. I mean, this is a record.
What do you say
Indian
to this
media.
argument then?
Exactly.
What does Pakistan stand to gain from spreading this type of tension and chaos across the border?
Look, I mean, in response to my colleague in Pakistan, yes, I think once again, both of those things, there is no either or. There is technology, there is intention, but I'm not too sure whether at this point there is proof of the sort that Pakistan wants from India. If you look at the entire history of Pakistan wanting proof or evidence from India of a sort that they would find actionable, they've basically put an extremely high barrier. Cooperation between the two countries is not at all what it should be with respect to arresting this kind of a dynamic. Anti-immigrant or in fact even xenophobic violence is not just something which is specific to India. We can see lots of Hindus from Pakistan coming across to the Indian side, and of course the entire region has xenophobia as one of the constitutive elements of its politics. I mean, I'm not here to defend the Indian record or to kind of point score on the Pakistani side. Having said all of this, if it was the case that there were elements within Pakistan who found this to be something that they could do and get away with, as has happened in the past, I'm sure that they would not lose an opportunity. As far as the 4 people whose pictures were circulated in the Indian by the Indian security agencies, once again he's correct, except for one of them who later on was found to have been a recruiting agent for the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. So just the fact that the Indian agencies made mistakes.
That's incorrect.
This has been reported in your own newspapers.
You're inaccurate. No, sir, that's inaccurate. That was not true.
Well, I'll take your word for it. I mean, obviously, I do not have the newspaper reports in front of me, but I do follow the Pakistani newspapers fairly closely. And as I said,
all four of them were proven. All four of them, I assure you, all four of them were proven to be ordinary citizens, and there was no follow-up on the case. It was case closed. I think you're indulging in a conspiracy theory that has no basis. The real issue here is that India is a huge country where you have an ethnic problem. I think the Indian government, instead of spending $300 billion on a moon mission or a Mars or a Mars mission, you should
My
really
point is
concentrate
precisely
and
that
spend
India
that
has these
money
problems.
on assimilating the Indian population and your nationhood.
But
and
my point is
why
that
would
precisely
Indian
that
citizens
these are problems of
harass
India.
your northeastern migrants? I mean, that's a real problem. It's not a Pakistan is busy in its own war on terror.
What I've been
Well,
saying
let's
so far,
perhaps put the question then to C Singh,
if you say
can.
what I've been saying so far, my point is
You're listening
precisely-
to this debate, and obviously this is inflaming tensions once again between Pakistanis and Indians. It's not the first time that India actually blames Pakistan for fomenting religious violence. It did so in 2002 in Gujarat. Doesn't this inflame the tension even more? And where does it leave the level of suspicion and mistrust between the two countries?
Thank God, because I'm so sick and tired of these diatribes coming from Pakistan. I normally don't get into an exchange, because I'm talking of the Home Secretary of India leveling a specific charge where they will hand over evidence to Pakistan. And we've got Abu Jundal from Saudi Arabia, which also Pakistan thinks has nothing to do with this. We've got Kasab here, who was caught shooting people in Mumbai. So, you know, this is not a question of leveling allegations and so on and so forth. The response one expects from Pakistan is a sensible response, which would be, please give us the evidence. If there are people who are trying to do it, the Pakistani government is not involved in it, but certainly there is no argument that there are enough mischief makers in an imploding state with excessive radicalization, which all kinds of people are fleeing, and then they stand there and give us a lecture
Mr.
on what
Singh,
India
Mr. Singh,
is or isn't.
India,
I mean, that is the surprising part.
In your Mr. Singh, in your northeast, you have 1/3 of India really covered by insurgencies. I mean, you're talking about implosion.
Have you ever been there? Have you ever visited that?
No, look at your country.
Have you ever been to that part?
You have a nuclear, sir, Mr. Singh. You have a an Indian nuclear scientist who was kidnapped.
You're basing your responses.
Sir,
Mr. Singh, your responses on extremely prejudiced,
nuclear scientist
extremely prejudiced reasoning.
From a nuclear installation. No, sir. No, sir.
You have
your
no idea at all what kind of a country India is.
I'm sorry.
Let's stop
India
comparing chalk and cheese. Please pay attention to Pakistan. Get your act together in Pakistan. Let not Hindus flee it.
No,
I've been defending on the television here the fleeing of Hindus from your country. Can you look after the minority?
You have a minority Hindi-speaking
shouting doesn't make it logical.
All right, Mr. Singh, if we can just allow
you have no clue what you're dealing with.
If I can just jump in. Can I just jump in briefly? All right, Ahmed Quraishi, if you can just put forward your argument and let's have Mr. Singh respond to it.
It's very simple. The ruling elite in New Delhi, unfortunately, it belongs to the minority Hindi-speaking population of northern India. And that minority ruling elite has caused frictions within the major ethnic and linguistic groups of India. You have Indian Christians alienated, Indian Sikhs, Indian Muslims, and you have, of course, now 1/3 of eastern India completely embroiled in insurgencies and separatist movements. You have almost more than 100 terror or insurgent or separatist movements in the eastern 1/3 of India. You have an Indian nuclear scientist that was kidnapped in that region. Certainly Pakistan had nothing to do with that. Certainly Pakistan was not kidnapping anyone there. And I think it'll be very useful for India to really focus and not try to unite the Indians in a difficult time. And I agree, and I really, my heart goes out to the people right now who are suffering because of the exodus. But I think it will not help India's case if you try to unite your people in this difficult time by pinpointing at a foreign created enemy, as in Pakistan, for example, in this case. Pakistan really has nothing to do with any social media campaign to sort of cause or incite hundreds of thousands of Indians to leave their cities, which is what's happening right now. Why
Ahmed
is it
Quraishi,
happening?
Let's allow Mr. C Singh to respond to this,
yeah,
if we could.
How do you respond to a diatribe which is illogical? Firstly, the ruling alliance is chaired by Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, who's a Christian. It is not a minority Hindu elite. The Prime Minister of India is a Sikh. Does he know even these fundamentals about India? Obviously, he doesn't. So he then just, from a jaundiced point of view, launches off on a subject he has little understanding of. If Pakistan is such a stable and sensible country, why are there drones, American drones, as we speak, hovering over parts of the tribal areas, hunting Pakistanis? Now, from a position where all we expect from Pakistan is, okay, please give us the evidence, which is what the Pakistani government is saying. please give us the evidence. And like many other incidents in the past, where Pakistan has been found responsible, let them take the evidence and shut those organizations down. And they are not able to do it. And it's not only India, it's US, it is United Nations, which has put a number of those organizations on their lists of people and organizations which should be shut down. Instead of doing that, you pick up an incident in India and enlarge it into a diatribe against India is a very illogical way of looking at it.
A very tense situation, no doubt. We'll have to leave our debate, though, on this issue here for now. Let me thank all of my guests in New Delhi, C Singh, in London, Subir Sinha, and in Islamabad, Ahmed Quraishi. And thank you, as always, for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Give us your feedback if you can by emailing us your thoughts to insidestory@aljazeera.net. From Miri Dafakhri and the team, thank you for watching.